What's up, YouTube? This is Bahamut Charizard 465 here, and today I'm not going to be settling with a Final Fantasy VI episode or a Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons episode. Today, I'm going to do something that I haven't done for quite a long time. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, but I'm finally back with another Top 10 Final Fantasy Countdown. Let's face it, summons are cool. They're powerful, helpful, and even have great significance, stories and legends behind them. Be it in the game itself, an origin name, or even a bit of both, they're very powerful. Some summons are especially interesting and overpowered. Those are the ones I'm going to count down with you today. However, there are so many good summons to the point where putting 10 of them on this list is too difficult. So before we start the official countdown, let's do a few honorable mentions and the disqualified tier. Because a lot of you are going to say, why isn't he on the list? Or why isn't she on the list? Or why isn't this one on the list? He's cool, that's cool, she's cool. Come on, I have a good reason for not putting them on the official list, but they'll be in the honorable mentions. Please keep in mind that people have their own preferences, so post in the comments which ones you like the most. Now, let's get on with it. Okay, some of you are gonna kick my ass for this one, I'm sure, but Zodiac is only an honorable mention. Why, you ask? Well, his representation of Ophiuchus, in my opinion, isn't that good, as Ophiuchus would very likely be a combination of all the elements instead of just dark, because he's the 13th Zodiac in the 12, and there are 12 elements. The fight against him is pretty annoying because of his cheap Darkcha attack, which he spams at the beginning of the fight. I just didn't feel much satisfaction after beating Zodiac, because once you get past the whole instant death attack, he's really easy to beat. And also, not only that, he's so much easier to find than Ultima because he's not inside that damned Great Crystal. I will admit though, in battle, he's pretty good. His finisher move is one of the most detailed animations, and it's a very powerful move, especially when you're playing the international version. As you all know, the international version is the only version of Final Fantasy XII where you can break the damage barrier. It kinda kills me to make Alexander only an honorable mention, because he's such a useful Eidolon. The basic idea of Alexander is that he's a walking castle with angelic wings. His name is a near direct translation of Alexandros, meaning to protect man. His elemental attack is Holy, which is great considering in most Final Fantasy games, near the end of the game, most monsters are weak to Holy. Another reason Alexander is an honorable mention is because of his appearance in Final Fantasy IX, when he protects Alexandria from Bahamut. The problem is that in most games you can't really use him. Now that the honor mentions are done, let's get the show started. This is, in my opinion, Final Fantasy's best summons. Also, before moving on, most of the entries contain spoilers. You have been warned. Come on now, don't act surprised. You all knew this was coming. Knights of the Round is one of the most powerful summons in all Final Fantasy, hitting for all enemies 5,000 to 9,999 damage. Putting them in this contest is simply too unfair. There's no point in watching a new video from me if you already know who's going to be number 1 on the list. Without a doubt, Knights of the Round is one of the most powerful summons in Final Fantasy history, and for that reason, it is disqualified. The very same thing goes for Anima in Final Fantasy X International only. In this version, she can hit for up to 9,999 damage 16 times with high physical and magical stats with Oblivion. This overdrive strikes for a total of 1.6 million points of damage. And in the English version, it's not hard at all to get her to do all 9s with her normal attack. Do you think I need to say more about that? Answer, no. Done, end of story. Let's move on. Now that the disqualified tier is also finished, let's get on with the official list. Well, maybe not official list, this is my list. Please remember that. If you've played either Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy IX, you know the significance of Madine, even though this is the only games where he/she appears. In Final Fantasy VI, he is the father of Terra. He also consoles her, giving her some sense and getting her to accept her Esper form, which she had originally rejected. In order to not spoil anything, I won't go any further into detail. I know there are some people who are probably new to Final Fantasy VI who are watching my video, and I don't want to spoil it for you. In 9, Madine is a female character who disguises herself as Mog to protect Aiko, a 6-year-old summoner from the town Madine Sari, the village of lost summoners. The final memento of Aiko's childhood Moogle friend is the friendship ring she had given her 3 years ago. In battle, Madine isn't the greatest summon, but he/she can be useful because of that Holy Elemental attack. However, the real reason is because of the significance in the stories. Seriously, if you can just think about how a really powerful Eidolon had disguised herself as a cute Moogle to protect an innocent 6-year-old summoner, doesn't that just warm your heart? Okay, I was originally going to put Ixion from Final Fantasy X as an honorable mention, but here's the thing. That's just not possible. He's majestic, a lightning horse. Okay, if that's not enough, think about this. Link is riding Epona, okay? Then think of Epona having lightning surrounding her. How cool is that? Something that's really cool about Ixion is his origin name, which dates back to Greek mythology. I will discuss it later on, but I'll post a link in the description of where I learned it. It's really something else. In the battle, Ixion is pretty useful as he can heal himself with Thundergao once you teach him how to use it. And using his signature Overdrive Thor's Hammer is very nice, especially against enemies that are weak to lightning. What's funny is that in Final Fantasy X-2, the attack is non-elemental. My only issue is that Ixion is really only useful for the time you first get him, unless you actually have the patience to increase all of the stats with the Aeon Soul. Ashura only appears in Final Fantasy IV, but that's totally okay with me. I only have one major problem with her. This is the fact that you need to beat her in order to get Leviathan and Bahamut, and unless you have Reflect, you're in for some serious trouble. She'll constantly cast Karaja on herself, healing for about 3,500 hit points. Beating her is rather simple. Cast Protect on the party, and then cast Reflect on Ashura, and it's a done deal. You can acquire her once Rydia returns as a young adult and you travel to the Phantom World in the Underworld. Ashura has quite the amount of significance in this story. She and the king of the Phantom World, Leviathan, raised Rydia to young adulthood after a huge storm separated everyone. In battle, Ashura is by far one of the most useful summons, as she can use Kiraja, protect, or life on the whole party, even when they have Reflect on, making her a very useful alternative for when your white mage, Rosa, has low magic points. So, you're fighting a powerful mage with super duper high HP. What do? Call a furry little unicorn with a red horn to save your ass, and just look at this thing, it's so cute! Anyways, back to Carbuncle. The main concept of this summon is to cast Reflect on the entire party. This saves time and magic points. In addition, if you're lucky enough to get the boosted version of him in 9, you're also getting an additional status effect, Protect. Combine that with the Reflect on the party, it's almost impossible to lose a normal battle, unless you're fighting a behemoth, of course. Just be careful not to use a cure spell. Alright, it doesn't get much better than Phoenix. I've got nothing more than this. Rebirth Flame. More than once has this saved my ass. In fact, I think Rebirth Flame was the sole reason I was able to beat Ozma in my LP of 9. Though this ability can be replaced with Phoenix Downs, they don't revive you at half health, nor restore the entire party. Yes, I am aware that there are Mega Phoenixes in Final Fantasy X, but Phoenix doesn't exist in that game, now does he? This entity has been in almost all the Final Fantasy games as a summon that you normally have to either fight or find in order to acquire. In Final Fantasy X, you get to use her before you even name her. Her design in 10 is so detailed, and they really want you to use her. She saves so many butts with her signature move Diamond Dust. So, anytime your summer day gets a little bit too hot, just call Shiva for a nice cool winter day. Would be nice to have right about now. Oh yes, you already know where we're going with this one. You guys knew this guy had to be on the list. In most games, you have to fight him in order to acquire him, and damn! He's difficult, unless you're at a high level. However, once you get him, you immediately realize why he was so hard to beat. His signature move, Zentetsuken, is an instant kill on almost every monster in these games, except for monsters that are immune to it, of course. Not only that, but the horse that he rides on is also known as Sleipnir, which is the name of a horse enemy in the 12th installment. Odin, in most games, is a summon which you have to fight, such as in Final Fantasy IV, as I said before. However, in 6 and 9, he's given a type of special story, let's call it. He has special significance in those games. To not spoil anything about 6, because some of you are following my LP of that, I'll only say it's a good story. The only time we see him in 9 is when he's seen in the cutscene destroying Clara, a place very close to the heart of Freya, the Dragoon. However, the problem I have with this guy is that he's only good for death attacks, making him totally useless in boss battles. If there is a way for him to deal damage without killing anything in any of these installments, please let me know, because so far I only see use for death attacks, and it doesn't even seem to work that much. I bet you're surprised to see this guy so high on the list, huh? Here's a small piece of advice. Find yourself in a bind often, go get your hands on a good old pumice stone. Somehow geology left out this existing igneous rock can teach us how to kick major ass. With this thing, not only do you get the most powerful summon in the game, but you get the longest and most detailed animation in the game. But what's so good about Arc? Well, one reason is that there's a small bug in Final Fantasy IX that is very useful. Let's say that Garnet, the main healer, and the Summoner of Arc has 1 hit point at level 99 with around 5,000 to 6,000 hit points max. But fear not, she has regained. If she casts Arc, her HP will undoubtedly rise to max by the time the animation is over, as the animation takes nearly a full minute. But wait, that's not all of it. He does shadow damage to the entire enemy party, which is a very good thing considering the fact that most enemies later on in the game are indeed weak to shadow. Alright guys, we are down to the final 2 summons. This was a very, very, very tough decision to make. So here we go. The number 2 best summon in Final Fantasy. As I said, this was a very tough decision to make. Leviathan has come in at number 2 on this list. Well, here's the thing. Water isn't normally something I like using in any of the Final Fantasy games, apart from Vivi's water spell in the 9th installment. That always changes, however, when I acquire Leviathan. This is hands down one of the greatest summons in the games. The only problem is that while he's useful, in most games he's only so useful. That is until you play Final Fantasies 4, 7, and 9. He isn't the most powerful, but he can have a spell power of up to 158 in 9 for a measly 42 magic points. The reason I say can have a spell power of up to 58 is because it depends on the amount of aquamarines you have. Talk about a deal though, seriously. A very good reason to see he's so high on this list is his significance in the 4th installment, however. It's the same thing with Ashura. When Rydia is separated from everyone else, she's swallowed by a whirlpool and taken to the Phantom World, the world where all the summons live. Leviathan, along with all of the others, raise her into young adulthood. Man, I would love to be raised by a chocobo. Alright guys, it's time for number 1. But seriously, you all know exactly who it is by this point, so let's just stop stalling and go right into it. I know. I think once you saw Knights of the Round and Anima being disqualified, you knew this guy would be number 1. For God's sake, he's in my name! How could Final Fantasy be Final Fantasy without this forever iconic and memorable dragon? A staple in the series since the very beginning, he wasn't always a summon, but an enemy. In Final Fantasy 1, he was an enemy. In Final Fantasy 5, he was an enemy, and then he became your friend and turned himself over to you. However, his Mega Flare is a very recognizable move. It's so powerful that even a party at high levels has a low chance to survive it. However, his force is not the main thing that puts him on this list. Oh no, it's the story. In mythology, Bahamut is actually a giant fish, and along with Kuchita, he holds up the 7 Earths. He's not a dragon with giant pew-pew death rays coming out of his mouth. I wish it was that way, but you know, it's not. How on earth did they take Bahamut the fish, and then make him into a form possibly more recognizable than what he was meant to be represented as? No, but here are the real reasons why he's number 1 on this list. In Final Fantasy IX, he has a true story with Kuja and Garnet, also known as Dagger. He was a good Eidolon turned evil by Kuja. In the end, Beatrix, who was the general of Alexandria, indirectly gives Garnet a Garnet. I don't think it's a coincidence that the jewel that represents the name of Garnet connects to one of the Eidolons and the one that damn near destroyed her kingdom. However, the real kicker about her and Bahamut is that when you visit the Eidolon Wall in Madine, Disc 4, under Bahamut's painting, you can read a note given to her by her father. It's here that Garnet is actually revealed to be named Sarah, another survivor of the decimation of the village of Lost Summoners. Wow.